When they say they're having water on the moon, most people would immediately assume that it's like water on Earth. It's that sort of transparent liquid that we drink. But there's no proof that it is. And even if it was, it would disappear. It would go. It would be boiled off.
When I had that little pump for the vacuum chamber, and I put just a little bit of water in the bottom of it. Now, I just mean by a little bit. I put it in a glass and just filled it maybe about 1/16 of the way. It took about 5 minutes for that water to outgas. Yeah. Now, when I took that same little glass and I put it in the chamber with a bigger pump on, as soon as I turned the switch on, it was gone. Yeah. Just shortly after that. So how is this going to work when you're on the lunar surface? The same way. It's going to go even faster. They're claiming, I believe it was, 0.608, something like that, % water that they found in one of those crater rims. Yeah. But how the heck are they measuring this? I mean, if they're going to use spectral analysis to do it, that's fine. But it's in a vacuum, guys. It's right on the surface.
Yes. Yeah.
If they found water, frozen water, like a sheet of ice there, I mean, there's going to be a Canada-Russian hockey game is going to break out there just as soon as you can, what else are they going to do with it?
But saying they found water on the moon encourages lots of people to speculate that what they found is what we know as water on Earth. And you can electrolyze it and produce hydrogen and oxygen from it. But if they haven't found liquid water, as we understand it, they've only found ice. Let's see a bit of it. They've got all these return rockets. Put a bit of it in one of those rockets, send it back to Earth, and we'll have a look at it. Because I don't think they found water. I think they found hydrogen and oxygen. If they make the assumption that hydrogen and oxygen combined make water, which they do, H2O, it's pretty routine stuff. But that's not what they found on the moon. They found hydrogen and oxygen isotopes separate, which is not water.
If you take a look at the landing of the Chandler 3 there from India, and you're looking at that stuff, they show the rover coming down off the little lander, right? They show their little animation and everything else, right? And you take a look at the sun angles on that. They're supposed to be on the South Pole. The sun's at least 45 degrees in the air. 45-degree angle to the shadow. And they're supposed to be on the South Pole. And if it's at a 45-degree angle, there isn't going to be any bloody water there. And if it is tucked away in the ground, that ground will radiate down. Like you get 250 degrees on the surface. Yes, there's no atmosphere, but the ground's going to heat up.
Yeah, it does.
And it's going to heat up down to a pretty good depth as well when you have that kind of temperature.
Well, I think they're being very optimistic about it all. I don't see it as being particularly relevant because nobody's proved it yet. All they've said is, oh, we found water on the moon. Well, if they have, let's see it. Take a picture of it. You've got the craft there to take pictures. Show us a picture.
Well, they show us pretty good animation. Here's what they're showing for a picture. I just wanted to show the sun angle here of them on the South Pole. In this image, you can see the little rover here, and that's the angle of the sun coming off it. If that's the South Pole, there's no water anywhere there. They got little videos and stuff like that. It's all animation. All of it's animation. The bell housing of the rocket engines are coming down, and then it has little retros that come out and tip it over, and then it lands on its feet sideways so that it can detach. So it can put their little rover on the ground and eject it out of there, right? Because if it was standing up on top of the bell housings, they wouldn't be able to do that. It was too high off the ground.
This is what I'm talking about here. There's the area where every time they draw one of these little loops here, this is where the shadow is, and that's where they're claiming the water is. Here, 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 and there.
Yeah. And the sun angle is going to change to the opposite direction that they claim are in shadows. When you go from a full moon to a new moon, and the far side is lit up.
Yeah, in fact, those pictures show the sun angle at the time they took that image. And its sun angle is quite high.
Maybe the studio effects wouldn't pick it up at that low angle of light. They had to put it higher, or, you know, artistic liberties being taken on filming it, right?
I think that's about right. Yeah. Or maybe some of the people creating the animation hadn't worked out the actual sun angles. They'd assumed that the sun angle would be where it is so it could illustrate what they were trying to show better.
That's right. Now we're back to Apollo. They made sure they so-called were landing for optimum shadow effect. And then because they were shooting here, all of a sudden you hit Apollo 17 and it's almost vertical within the next magazine right after lunch. I mean, you know, they stopped, had lunch, come back, and the shadow's just a little tiny thing sitting there. They had the same problem with that. And that happens when you're shooting outside on the Earth, right?
Yep.
You only have so many hours of the day.
Yes, you've got to come back when it's dried out a bit after dawn. The dew is there.
Oh, well, the flag. They had to change that bloody flag up. It's too wet. Just unbelievable. I hope our viewers understand we have looked at this for so long, everything is just ridiculous. But it's being recorded as history.
Well, they're desperate to record it as history because they have to maintain the fiction that humans have landed on the moon. But they can't prove it. When we come up with objections, as we do quite regularly, we don't come up with objections, we just ask questions, as any skeptic might do. We could be considered skeptics, but we just ask the question, where is the answer to this particular problem? How do you use photographic film in a vacuum? It's a straightforward question. We're told the moon has a vacuum, quite a hard vacuum, much harder than anything here on Earth. And we know that photographic film is at the very least damaged in a vacuum. The color balance is shot to pieces, as we've demonstrated with a relatively low vacuum. So on a hard vacuum, you would expect color balance to be completely out of the question, but it's not. These 5,771 images taken allegedly on the lunar surface by the 12 named astronauts don't show any color balance problems. They show lovely full spectrum color images. How is that when photographic film is damaged in a vacuum, and specifically color film is damaged in a vacuum? We're told it was special film. Okay, well, what's special about it? How did it maintain the color balance?
They don't even know.
Well, it doesn't matter what they've done with the film. The emulsion is exactly the same.
Yeah.
It can't even be synthesized, that particular emulsion. And that is curiosity how they came up with it in the first place. They claim this is not animation. This is the actual footage.
All right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I've seen that footage.
Yeah.
That must
But
have
then
took
you see
forever.
if they're on the South Pole.
That
They,
must
here
have
we're back to the sun angle again.
Yeah, we must have took forever for that door to come down, because you see how the door's time lapsed. Then it goes back to normal speed and the rover just kind of goes off there. But the landing, where did the landing go? They showed it coming down, tipped over. Those two probes got released. Where is it? Well, it doesn't tip over then, that's for sure. It just comes down, lands, lets its cargo out. I don't have any problem with any of this, seriously. I mean, it's about time they finally got something there. I mean, it's 2023 for crying out loud.
This particular piece of equipment here that they're showing in the diagrams on this are not the piece that was in that animation. No,
Not
it was
for
just
sure.
a little skinny thing, engine on the bottom, the legs are out one side, retro's on that side, pushed it over, and down it comes. And then it comes the thing. Nothing to do with any of this equipment.
Yeah, and it's moving quite fast across the surface. If it hit doing that sort of speed, it would tip over.
But the one we were watching, it comes down like this, stops, and then this little puff of gas comes out. It tips over on its side, and then the two probes go out from it. But I don't see this thing rolling over on its side.
No, this is a
Anywhere.
completely different machine.
Well, here's the machine inside while they're building it. Yeah, and that's the one in the black and white one that matches. Where's the machine that releases those two probes? Oh, this isn't it.
That's not the same craft.
No, the one she was showing wasn't the same.
No, none of them.
I still can't get over the Atari animation. This is 1980s, my friend.
Dear, oh dear.
That show of Randy's got 1,215 hours, something like that. Yeah, there's comments from people I've never seen before all over that one.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
See, it seemed to get a lot of views very fast, that film.
Then you have the normal guys in there, and one new guy that put about 15 or 20 comments in a row. Hasn't got a clue what he's talking about, but he's there.
Well, it's nice that he's commenting. Maybe by watching it, he'll learn a bit.
Our viewers really need to hear our opinions on just how much we have to put up with.
What, from the comments?
Yeah.
Living through the comments is part of the process that we go through. Occasionally, the comments can be quite helpful. Not often, but they can be. It's just that because what we do is challenge people's belief. We challenge their belief in what they believe. So they have confirmation bias. Everything that they hear that confirms what they believe is okay. People like us who come along and challenge that with, to be fair, a degree of science backing, a degree of science knowledge, they immediately assume that we are talking rubbish. We're not talking rubbish. You can check it out yourself. We don't say things we cannot back up. We don't say things that we cannot support, and we can demonstrate that they are correct. So what is unfortunate is when people don't look at what we say and challenge it on the basis that we are defining NASA's ability to land on the moon. Well, that's what we do. We challenge that. Now, if we're wrong, as I've said so many times, it's getting boring. If we are wrong, if I am wrong in anything I say, I want to hear about it. I don't want to hear insults. I don't want to hear aggressive behavior. I just want to hear detailed information. If you can't provide the detailed information to support what you say, then forget it. You'll be ignored. You've got to provide detailed information. Support the points you make. You may be right. Let's see it. Let's hear how you arrived at the position that you are currently holding. Not because you've read it somewhere, not because you watched some YouTube film of somebody agreeing with you. That's not investigation. That's propaganda. If we're getting propaganda, we'll ignore it. It just doesn't matter. It's not important. The information that Robert illustrates on the films that we post, because they are recordings of the discussions we're having. So what's the problem? If you don't agree with what we say, that humans have not landed on the lunar surface for various good, scientifically provable reasons, then prove we're wrong. That's what I always say, prove me wrong. I don't claim to be 100% correct on all occasions, as many people have pointed out. I make mistakes, everybody makes mistakes. Do you make mistakes in what you're saying? You people who attack us? Then let's hear about it. Let's hear what we've done wrong. Let's see where we can go right.
When people say such things, and they'll come up with excuses, for example, we never post the data. Where can we find the data? How come you don't put it in the links? How come you don't post it in the description box? So they'll say, well, you haven't posted it in the description box. And I'll say, yes, but I have posted it in the video. I put the very first page of the document in the video. It has all the numbers on it. All you have to do is go into Google, type those numbers in, and the PDF will pop up for you. So they expect us to do the work for them too now? Yeah, and then Peter Poop comes along and he says, well, he's one of the members, longer time members of the Bertie Bunch. So he comes up and he says, well, Marcus and Randy, they didn't have any links or any evidence to say that India had to ask NASA for permission to land on the moon. And I went onto Google yesterday with Scott and I looked at it and I'm going, well, that's interesting because there it is. I asked ChatGPT just for the fun of it. And I have a screenshot of it, which I'll be posting on this part too.
That's a very good point. It's a very good way to do it, because if people post such things about our discussions, and that discussion I had with Randy, that was only one part of it. There's more to come. So look forward to that, guys. And there's more information there. They attack us for not doing something that they don't do themselves. They never post the links to the corrections that they are claiming they're making. They don't do that. They just say we're wrong. No, we're not wrong. We're actually correct. And we have the evidence to back it up.
These people that have the proof, if they're going to do the research and do the proof, we'll invite them on the show.
Yeah, that's a good point.
They come on the show. Don't attack us from a sideline. Don't be like McKeegan and Simon Dan and all those guys that just take cheap pot shots at us and run away like cowards. I understand McKeegan's got one out. And Dave, if you're watching this, I mean, you don't even know who I am yet. You got it wrong the first time. You didn't have a clue. And you still don't have a clue. And apparently he's made another video recently on us.
Yeah.
And he's not even on topic with what we were discussing, because we were talking about the inventions and technical achievements that NASA had that would get them to the moon, right? But I said they're not available on the commercial market. So I guess he just Googled his Google University, that's where he's going to, and he comes up with, oh, what NASA's inventions were. Well, we don't give a shit. Memory foam doesn't get you to the moon. I'm sorry. And if he's that stupid to not even understand the topic that we're discussing, because he doesn't know who we are yet. And I know Dave's listening. He's going to watch the video and he's just going to go apeshit. I mean, the man hasn't even handled a film camera. If he's going to do something, go buy a 500 EL Hasselblad camera, buy the film, buy a vacuum chamber, do the tests, and stop pissing around with your cheap shots. He won't come on our show. He's making an idiot of himself. We don't have to do that. He's already done that himself. He's embarrassed himself because he doesn't know who we are. He doesn't know the type of research we have done or the number of years that we've been doing it at. And Marcus, you're well over 30 years.
Yeah, 30 years of research into this whole area. More than that now. It's increasing all the time. I hardly look old enough to have been around with, but I was around when they landed on the moon. I watched it happen live on my little black and white television in my flat in London in 1969. I'm that old.
Same thing. I mean, we watched it. We were all sitting there watching it in our living room on an old RCA black and white television with rabbit ears.
It was an important event because it had been bigged up so far by NASA's publicity department because they wanted to ensure that everybody was aware of how important this event was. It had to be seen to happen. That's why it was on television. Now, there's a lot of things on television then and now, and in the 54 years in between, which we've watched and we know are not correct. Just because they're on television doesn't mean to say it's correct. You know, same old thing. I've seen 80-foot gorillas climb the Empire State Building and King Kong. Is that real? No, of course it's not. It's Hollywood at its finest. I've seen men walking on the moon. Is that real? No, of course it's not. Not necessarily Hollywood doing that, but there were people there. And the previous issue of Nexus covers that particular story. It's called Operation Slam Dunk, because they ensure that it was correct. Now, if you're going to do something, you want to make sure that you get all the details correct. So if it's going to be filmed at Cannon Air Force Base in New Mexico, which is where it happened, they would ensure that the film was correct. It's interesting that one of the stories about Apollo is that they lost all the tapes which had the original film on it.
Which are now for sale.
Exactly. And they've been discovered in the old McDonald's warehouse.
Right beside Menlo.
Yes.
Robert and I were looking that up.
That's an incredible discovery. It's right by Menlo Park.
Isn't that something, how that has been staring us right in the face all these years? And then all of a sudden, one shot comes out and, hey, wait a minute, I know that blimp hangar. That's Menlo Park. So I looked up San Francisco and I looked around the area. Like, wait a minute, there, it's right there. And it's been staring us in the face the whole time.
Yeah.
McDonald's is right beside the hangar.
Right beside it.
Yeah.
He's got a picture of it. That's where they must have shot all the orbital stuff.
When they looked at those films, I have a picture of one fellow holding the film up to the light. And guess what? They're all orbital shots. Amazing.
So they must have used that hangar.
It's known as Hangar 1. It's an old airship hangar. It's one of the biggest buildings in America, if not the world. It's huge. It has been used as a film studio. I believe that's where the film of Apollo 13 was partly shot there, because it enables control of the environment, the use of large light setups to imitate the sun. And that's where there have been these questions about light fall off, especially the Apollo 11 photographs. You can see the light fall off because artificial light, no matter how powerful it is, on a big distance, will tend to show fall off. That was identified 25 years ago. There's fall off in the pictures. It's one of the points that David Percy made in his films.
Yeah, that's exactly right. But people need to know how close Menlo is to Paramount and Downey Studios. It's very close by.
12 miles.
I mean, how handy is that? And my only question is considering the fact that McDonald's is such a successful corporation, why would it be closed out? That's my only question. Unless somebody actually bought the property from them because they needed it.
This is interesting because I had a look on Google as to when they found those tapes, and it was 2009. So we had to look at some of the interior of this restaurant, McDonald's restaurant. You do know the very first thing they do when they close a restaurant down like that, they take the stainless steel, they take the fryers, they take the cooktops, all of the appliances are gone out of there. Yep. And they're moved to another location. Well, all of that stuff is still there. Why is it all still there if they're not going to ever use it again?
Yeah, it just looks like they just shut the door.
Yeah.
Everything is there.
Maybe NASA took over their lease, paid them enough money so that they could store all these thousands of reels. They're big reels. They're not so little pen drives. These are huge 14-inch, 2-inch wide reels of tape.
The thing is, they're not data tapes. They're all footage from the orbital perspective. That's all they are. They're all just film reels, 70 millimeter film reels and 16 millimeter. So they have 16 millimeter film reels and 70 millimeter spools of these shots. That's crazy.
So come on, Dave McKeegan, let's see you have a look at this and tell us how wrong we are when the evidence is staring you in the face that the McDonald's restaurant, literally next door to Hangar 1 in Menlo Park, is where all these tapes were stored. Is that wrong? Is that incorrect information? Come on, let's hear about it. You're so knowledgeable. Go and do some decent research.
Is that on Sotheby's is selling the... Well, what I found interesting there, they're putting them up. They're already claiming they'll catch about $2 million for these 3 tapes, right? There's a nice shot there.
Yeah, it's a good one.
And there's the inside. There's the tapes. All the equipment's still there.
See? Yeah. Look at them. Look at this reels and reels of tape.
Incredible. And it's just sitting in a disused McDonald's restaurant. Why is it there?
There's all the equipment, the stainless steel, the equipment, the fryers, the
ovens,
heaters.
Everything are there.
It's all there.
Yeah.
Why don't they take these out? I used to do electrical in restaurants, and we used to move the equipment around. Very first thing that got taken out of there was all these appliances because they didn't want them destroyed, ruined, or wrecked in the renovation. Or if they're taking the restaurant down, selling it to somebody else, the first thing that goes. They'll get stolen too, by the way, very quickly.
Is there any equipment available today that can play those tapes?
Yeah, Tim has one.
That's the machine they took apart to clean and couldn't put it back together, so they threw it out.
Matter of fact, of course they do. He's got the machine set up right here. There, he's looking at it. There. There's one of the machines that plays the data tapes right here. So you can't say that they didn't have the machine to look at the data tapes. These are data tapes.
Yeah, so can those still be played today on equipment?
Well, there's the machine playing them right now.
So that would have been in 2009.
Yeah.
And then they claimed that they only had one machine. They took it apart to clean it, and they couldn't get it to work, so they threw it out.
Rubbish.
That was the claim. And then when I was talking to Tim, he says, I got one of those machines.
Isn't it convenient that the things that are required to demonstrate NASA's fraud are conveniently disappeared. If Tim has got a machine that can play those tapes, let's go and get one of those reels and see if he can do it. See what's on it.
I think he offered.
He already offered.
There's something very wrong here. Much of what we have discovered over the last 25, 30 years has now come to fruition because we can now demonstrate that certain events which are considered to be historical information, i.e. there's no machine to play the tapes, is wrong. There are machines, and if Tim has got those machines and is willing to do it, all it needs is somebody to rock up to the McDonald's restaurant, get a few of those tapes and get them over to Tim.
And if they've degraded in any way, shape, or form, he's got the equipment to bring it back.
There we go. Yeah. Now, if we can find those data tapes and play them, and if there's anything on it which demonstrates the fraud of NASA, it's game over. We're quite close to that point.
All of these people that are sitting talking about how great things are about NASA's new projects and everything else. There's an article on how the one satellite that's heading directly towards the sun managed to successfully get through the last couple of CMEs that happened, the solar mass ejections that have happened. Oh yes, they're perfectly hardened and everything else. We've got that down pat. Well, how come the ones in low Earth orbit don't have that hardening equipment? Because they knocked a few thousand of them out the last time around. That's what the reports are on it. And the other thing I've been saying for a long time is the communications through the Van Allen belts, right? And if you want to read an article that really, really will set it home for you, is just look up on NASA scintillation. And that's the distortion or blackout conditions between 100 and 250 miles for low Earth orbit satellites when you have a CME. That is what is getting through the Van Allen belts from the sun on a CME and destroying the communications of those satellites. They're already fully protected by the Van Allen belts. So if you're on the outside of that and you have a CME, or if you're within the Van Allen belts, I mean, they're going to be completely trashed, these machines. They're only talking about the scintillation, which is the distortion in low Earth orbit. They don't talk about satellites they claim are out farther than that. So you read that, and then you read the one that's headed towards the sun, and it works perfectly fine. Well, if that one works perfectly fine, why don't they use that technology on the other ones? There's an inconsistency. And this is what we talk about, are the inconsistencies in the documents that NASA produces. One is in direct conflict with another document. And we have this all the time. And of course, if NASA wants to prove that they landed on the moon, they have restored the guidance computer system. They've restored the entire control panels, everything at Houston. It's fully functional. They've got all kinds of museum pieces that they have to just rot the dust off of, fuel them up, and away they go. Use that equipment. You've restored it all. You've restored the spacesuits. You've got everything there. All you have to do is throw some fuel in it and a couple of guys and go to the moon. You don't need this new technology. That stuff worked just fine. Absolutely fine in 1969. You've restored it all.
Look at the money you could save. I mean, look at the money the public could save, because there's no space station required. There's no extra fueling or ferrying fuel up to low Earth orbit, then ferrying more fuel to the space station, the lunar gateway station, so that when they come back from the moon, they can fuel up to head back to Earth. Where are all these ferry vehicles going to be manufactured? We don't see anything yet.
And they don't need to do any testing. It's already been done. It's proven. They've said it over and over and over again. This stuff worked. You don't need to retest it. The suits worked. Everything worked. Their guidance system works. And they've got it fully functional and put it on display for simulation. They've got everything built, except they got to now put a launch pad up and a rocket because they don't even have anything to launch. I mean, that's really sad, you know. That's really sad.